Hey everyone, this is Chris here, and welcome to today's video where we're going to be discussing whether or not Guillermo Vila should have been ranked #1 in the world all the way back in 1977. This is actually a very controversial topic because Guillermo Vila was able to win 2 Grand Slam titles back then, and he reached the finals of a 3rd Grand Slam, but he was only ranked #2 that year because of the way that the Grand Slam and the ATP ranking points were calculated back in the 1970s. Now, before we get into this topic, I'd like to encourage you guys, if you're new to this channel, to please take a minute to hit the subscribe button down below. That'll keep you notified of any time we release additional content like this. And of course, if you enjoy videos like this, then please be sure to share this video with your friends. All right, guys, without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so now we're going to be diving into one of the most interesting topics, in my opinion at least, of the last 50 years, which is how could Guillermo Vila, a player who was able to win 2 Grand Slam titles and reach the finals of a 3rd, how is it that he was not able to be ranked #1 in the world in the calendar year in which he performed all this? And it's one of the most baffling things when you think about it, if you come at it from the perspective of how things are ranked today. You know, a player gets 2,000 ranking points for winning a Grand Slam title, they get 1,000 for winning a Masters. But back in the 1970s, the way the ATP would calculate the player's ranking was based off of their average. So they would look at all the tournaments that the player had played in throughout the course of that year, and they would say, okay, so this player on average is reaching the finals, let's say, of a Grand Slam. And they take another player and they say, well, this player is reaching the semifinals of a Grand Slam. So player A should be ranked ahead of player B because of the fact that player A has a better overall average. Now, with that being said, player B might have won a couple of major titles and player A might not have won any. And that's very much what happened in this case. You see, Guillermo Vila lost in the 3rd round of Wimbledon, which heavily affected his average for that year, but he was able to make the finals of the Australian Open, he won the French Open, and he won the US Open, and I believe he also made the finals of the World Tour Masters that year. I think it was called something different, but he had an exceptionally good year that year. So you have to look at it and say, why is it that he wouldn't be ranked #1? And another thing that's really interesting is that there were actually some mathematicians, I believe they were Argentinian mathematicians, that took a look at the results of his career, and they even were able to determine that Guillermo Vila should have been ranked #1 back in 1975 for 5 weeks, and at the beginning of 1976, I believe for the first 2 weeks of that year. So that means that he would have finished 1975 as the world #1. And he definitely should be recognized by the ATP as being a #1 player. Unfortunately, the ATP has never made an effort to rectify this. So he's really the best player to never be officially recognized by the ATP as the #1 player in the world. And it's really a shame, and it's something that I hope that they will rectify soon because he deserves that. He had by far the best result of any player in 1977. And for them to still not acknowledge this 45 years later, 46 now years later, it's just ridiculous in my book. So anyway, guys, so those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Do you think that the ATP should rectify the ATP rankings for back then to make it so that Guillermo Vila is officially recognized as being the #1 player in the world? Leave me your thoughts in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Happy New Year's, and I will catch you at the next one.
Silent thunder, you're ready to strike.
Hey everyone, this is Chris here, and today is January 28th, 2023. I've got a really interesting video for you guys. We're going to be talking about in today's video the reason why Jim Courier started to decline after the 1993 tennis season. Before we get into this topic though, I'd like to encourage you guys, if you're new to this channel, to please take a minute to hit the subscribe button down below. That'll of course keep you notified of any time I release additional content like this. And if you enjoy videos like this, then please be sure to share this video with your friends. Alright guys, without further ado, let's get into it. Another reason why I wanted to cover it today is because I just realized that it was 30 years ago this month or next month, that Jim Courier won his last Grand Slam title. That was at the 1993 Australian Open. Of course, you go back 30 years ago, nobody would have ever thought that Jim Courier would not win another Grand Slam final after his incredible performance against Stefan Edberg. Jim Courier had really been pretty dominant in the years preceding that. He had, of course, won his first Grand Slam title at the 1991 French Open, where he defeated Andre Agassi in 5 sets. The following year, he would win the Australian Open for the first time, and then he would follow that up by defending his title at the French Open in 1992 against Peter Korda, and then he would win his 4th and final Grand Slam title at the 1993 Australian Open. 1993 is a really interesting year for Jim Courier because it was an extremely solid year for him in a lot of senses. He reached 3 Grand Slam finals that year at the Australian Open, the French Open, and Wimbledon, and he was able to win one of them, of course, the Australian being the one that he won. Now, one thing that's very interesting about this year is that we can start to see a decline in Courier's game, and I really feel that that decline started, I would say, after Wimbledon. I think the genesis for this was just because of how dominant he had been throughout the previous 2 years. 2 years might not seem like a long time to really be a dominant player, but when you get to the top of the game, it's very, very difficult to sustain that because you have to give it 100% on the practice court. You have to keep looking for new ways to improve out there. And if you decline, even if it's just a little bit, it'll prevent you from being able to win those Grand Slam titles that previously you were able to win. And I know this was a fact for Jim Courier, was he just lost a little bit of his desire, I think, or maybe more than a little bit, but he really lost that for a period of time to go out there and put in the extra effort to win those titles. And tennis is a very fluid sport, you know. If you're off for a year or two, the odds are that you're not going to be able to come back from that and keep winning titles. And I think that's what happened for Courier. And also, you combine that with Pete Sampras really emerging and becoming very, very dangerous on the hard courts again. And Andre Agassi, for a short period of time, also becoming a threat to win slams as well. Agassi wasn't so much of a problem, though, for Courier. It was really, I think, Pete Sampras, and also all those guys that could play well at the French Open. You had Bruguera, Muster, Kafelnikov, a whole bunch of these guys. So it was just hard to break through because there was so much variety and so many great players that could win an event like that. And then for every other event, you've got Pete Sampras, who's a threat to win, and there just wasn't really an opening for a guy like Jim Courier to really get in there and win a Grand Slam title. Basically those are my thoughts. I think he got what he could out of his career, and I think he just kind of lost his passion. Maybe after he lost a few of those Grand Slam finals, might have had something to do with it, but probably it was just those years of being a top player that really just kind of had a way of causing him to lose a little bit of the fire that he had inside from winning those events. But anyway, guys, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Tell me, why do you think that Jim Courier lost his desire to be a top-level Grand Slam contender? Thank you so much for watching, guys. I will see you at the next one.
Loving you is a dirty job.
Hey everyone, this is Chris here, and today is February 8th, 2023. I've got a really exciting topic for you today. In this video, we're going to be discussing Michael Chang's amazing accomplishment to winning the 1989 French Open when he was just 17 years old. This is a really remarkable record that still stands even to this day. He became the youngest player to ever win a Grand Slam title, at least on the ATP Tour. And this is a record that was set almost 34 years ago. So before we get into all that, I'd like to encourage you guys, if you're new to this channel, to please take a minute to hit the subscribe button down below. That'll keep you notified of any time we release additional content like this. And of course, if you enjoy videos like this, then please be sure to share this video with your friends. All right, guys, without further ado, let's get into it. So when Michael Chang entered the French Open in the spring of 1989, I think it's very fair to say that there weren't many people that would have expected him to be there at the end holding the Coupe de Mousquetaire. However, he was able to get off to a really strong start in this event, winning the first 3 matches very comfortably. This would include an impressive win against Pete Sampras, who he defeated 6-1, 6-1, 6-1 in the second round. And then in the 4th round, he would get his first real test against the former 3-time champion, Ivan Lendl. Now, Lendl was one of the best players in the world at this point in 1989. He was ranked number 1. He had just recently won the Australian Open. He was coming off of that. But for whatever reason, he was a little bit tight in this match against Chang. And Chang was able to get a break late in the first set, which really caused Lendl to just kind of come off the rails a little bit. Chang would ultimately lose the first set, though, to Lendl 6-4, and then he would go up an early break in the second set, and just when it looked like Chang might be able to turn things around, Lendl was able to get the rebound, get his momentum going back, and he would win the second set also. So Lendl is now up 2-0 against Michael Chang. It looks like things are going to be over for him pretty soon, but Chang once again goes up a break against Lendl, and this time he's able to win the third set. And now this is where things really get interesting. In the 4th set, Michael Chang starts to cramp. He has a really bad case of cramping in the 4th set, and Lendl during this time is getting frustrated. He's really agitated because he knows that Chang is cramping. He's missing balls he should be making, but he's missing them. And he just winds up losing his focus a little bit, and Chang is able to win the 4th set. So now we go to a 5th set, and amazingly, even though Lendl is physically much fresher and much fitter at this point than Chang, he isn't able to win the 5th set, and Michael Chang is able to break Ivan Lendl to win the match and put himself in the quarterfinals of a Grand Slam. It's a huge moment for Michael Chang, and he then goes on to win his quarterfinal match and reach his first ever Grand Slam semifinal. So in the semifinals, Chang would have to face off against Andrei Chesnikov. Andrei Chesnikov did not have a long career at the top of the game. However, he was able to give Michael Chang a really close fight on this particular afternoon. Chang was eventually able to win the match, though, in 4 sets, and he moves on to the finals to go up against Stefan Edberg. At the time, Stefan Edberg was one of the best players in the world and probably the best player on grass. He was coming off of his relatively recent Wimbledon win back in 1988. And he was a tough opponent to beat on any surface, but clay was probably not his best surface. He was more of a fast court specialist, especially on grass. He was a lot better on grass than he would have been on clay. So Michael Chang is able to take advantage of this. He gets off to a great start in the first set of the match, and he wins it 6-1 against Edberg. Now Edberg comes racing back. He wins the next 2 sets, and the match is now looks to be heading into Edberg's favor. It looks like Edberg is going to win the match at this point. He's up 2-1 against Michael Chang, but Chang is able to come back. He levels the match at 2-all, and we're heading into a 5th set. Now, an interesting thing about this 5th set is that Edberg immediately gets up a break against Michael Chang. He's up 1-0, and it looks like for a fleeting minute, Stefan Edberg is going to win this match. But Michael Chang immediately shuts him down. He turns the momentum against Edberg. He just starts coming up with incredible shots, and he's able to win the match miraculously at the age of 17 years old. He wins his first and turns out to be his only Grand Slam title that year. It's kind of an interesting thing when you think about it that Michael Chang was the youngest of the great American players that played in the 90s, you know, Agassi, Sampras, Courier. But he won his Grand Slam title before all of those guys, and then he never won another one after that. So it is kind of a strange thing. I've always thought in that sense that he was never able to really follow this up. He would come close in 1996. He made the finals of the Australian Open and the finals of the US Open also, but I don't think he won a set in either of those 2 finals. This would really be the highlight of his career. If you guys remember watching this match, then please leave me a comment down below with what you thought about Chang's performance throughout the 2 weeks of the 1989 French Open. And thank you so much for watching, guys. I will see you at the next one. Hey everyone, this is Chris here, and today is March 5th, 2023, and in this video, we're going to be discussing the career of Andre Agassi's former coach and the man who wrote the book Winning Ugly, Brad Gilbert. Now, before we get into this topic, I'd like to encourage you guys, if you're new to this channel, to please take a minute to hit the subscribe button down below. That'll keep you notified of any time we release additional content like this, and of course, if you enjoy videos like this, then please be sure to share this video with your friends. All right, guys, without further ado, let's get into it. So Brad Gilbert was born on August 9th, 1961. He would reach a career high ranking of number 4 in the world, and throughout the course of his career, he would win 20 ATP titles. The interesting thing about Brad Gilbert was he was the first and maybe the only player to ever really make it on the tour who never had big weapons. His forehand, his serve, his backhand were all well below the level of a top-level player. However, what made Brad Gilbert so effective and so dangerous was his incredible understanding of how to not make errors and how to construct points. He was able to frustrate players like Andre Agassi and even John McEnroe, who infamously took a 6-month hiatus after losing to Brad Gilbert. And he was a very, very smart and intelligent player who could make the opponent look bad and, to quote McEnroe, bring the opponent's level down to his level. While Gilbert's lack of weaponry would ultimately hinder his ability to win a Grand Slam, it would ironically go on to really benefit his future protege, Andre Agassi. Gilbert and Agassi would team up in 1994, and Agassi at the time was really looking for a coach who could help him to get his career back on track, and Gilbert was able to do just that. The thing that he would start to really emphasize with Agassi was that perfection was ruining him, and that he needed to focus more on constructing points, not going for the perfect shot, and building points and letting the opponent beat themselves. This is all stuff that was covered in Andre Agassi's book, and it's a really interesting partnership, probably one of the best player-coach relationships that I've ever read about. And it worked extremely well for both players, as Agassi would go on to win 6 Grand Slam titles with the help of Brad Gilbert. Gilbert would later go on to coach Andy Roddick from 2003 through 2004. That would be the year that Roddick would win his first and only Grand Slam title at the 2003 US Open. And then Gilbert would later go on to coach Andy Murray for a short period of time. He's coached players of all different levels, including the amateur level as well. But Brad Gilbert is probably best known for his time working with Andre Agassi during their 8 years together, and also for the fact that he was maybe the only player in the history of the game to achieve a top 5 ranking and yet not really have any weapons outside of his competitive nature and just his brilliant understanding of how to construct points. Hopefully you guys found this video to be really enjoyable and interesting. If you have not read Brad Gilbert's book, I'm going to include a link to it down below. I would highly suggest reading it. It's one of the most interesting books that really dives into the construction of points and what tennis players need to understand to get the most out of their games. Definitely pick this book up if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I will see you at the next one. Hey everyone, this is Chris here, and today is April 24th, 2023. I've got a really exciting topic for you today. In this video, we're going to be discussing the career of Marcelo Rios, who is the only tennis player to achieve the #1 ranking in the world without winning a Grand Slam title. Now, before we get into this topic, I'd like to encourage you guys, if you're new to this channel, to please take a minute to hit the subscribe button down below. That'll keep you notified of any time we release additional content like this. And of course, if you enjoy videos like this, then please be sure to share this video with your friends. All right, guys, so without further ado, let's get into it. So Marcelo Rios was born on December 26 of 1975, and he was the first and I believe only Chilean player to reach the #1 ranking in the world, which he managed to do back in 1998. An interesting trivia question about Marcelo Rios is that he was the player who dethroned Pete Sampras after his 102-week run at the top of the game, which went back to February of 1996, I believe. Marcelo Rios would start off with a very good career in the juniors, where he would reach the #1 ranking in the world. He was I believe he was a Grand Slam champion with the juniors, although I'm not 100% certain of that. I do know that he would have some good results when he first got going on the tour, gradually working his way up. And then in 1996, when he was 20 years old, he would manage to have his first season where he would be ranked inside of the top 20 at the year end. So he had a very good start to that season. And then 1997 is really when things got going for Rios. He would capture his first Masters 1000 title at the Monte Carlo Open, and he would start to show signs of promise that year. He had a very consistent, solid year in 1997, reaching the 4th round of every Grand Slam event, and he made the quarterfinals, I believe, at the US Open and also at the Australian Open. Marcelo Rios, in my opinion, was one of those players you could just tell from an early age he had the potential to really do anything in the game. He had so much talent in terms of his touch, the fact that he had a big serve, he was a left-handed player, he had a lot of things really going for him. He was very fast around the court. He could come up with incredible shots that really no one else could come up with, could manage to replicate. But unfortunately, it just didn't quite work out for him in those big moments, and he wound up losing some matches that you would kind of favor him to win. But regardless, in 1998, Marcelo Rios would have his first big opening to make a major breakthrough on the tour when he made the finals of the Australian Open, and his opponent was Peter Korda. Now, at the time, Korda was about 30 years old. He had been in this position a couple of times before, but in a lot of senses, this is a story that's very similar to Andre Agassi and Andreas Gomez from about 8 years before, when Rios was heavily favored to beat Korda. In fact, he had beaten him the year before in the first round at the Australian Open. Now, Rios would wind up choking in this match, and he choked really badly. He would lose the match in straight sets, 6-2, 6-2, 6-2, and of course this would be Peter Korda's only Grand Slam title. Now, a couple months later, Rios would continue his amazing form by capturing his second Masters 1000 title at Indian Wells. He would then complete the Sunshine Double just a couple weeks later by winning Miami, and he would defeat Andre Agassi in the finals, and I believe this is the match where he would take over the #1 ranking from Pete Sampras. Now, Marcelo Rios was not able to play in Monte Carlo, so he lost some of his ranking points from that, but he was able to win Rome that year, which would be his third Masters 1000 title. And again, this is just an amazing performance from a guy that's only maybe 22. Again, things were seemingly working out really well for him. In '99, he would capture an additional 2 titles after winning Hamburg. And then in 2000, he would have more injury problems. I think his back, in this case, was more of the problem for him. He would win only 1 title in 2000. 2001 would be a little bit of a step back in the right direction. Rios was able to get his ranking into the top 50, and he would win a couple more ATP titles that year, smaller events like maybe 250, 500 level. 2002 would be kind of an up and down year for Rios, but during the points when he was on, he actually did quite well. He would manage to reach the quarterfinals of the Australian Open, and he would have a very good showing again in Miami. And then in 2003, unfortunately, his injury problems would just reach another level where he really wouldn't be able to continue his game at the top level anymore. And he was still really young at this point. He was only, I think, about 27 years old, so time is still kind of on his side, but unfortunately his body just couldn't hold up with it any longer, and he wound up having to retire in 2004 just because of all the injuries that he had. One interesting thing about Marcelo Rios was that he would make a return briefly on the Champions Tour in 2006. The way it worked back then was you had to wait 2 years from the time you retired before you were eligible to join the Champions Tour, assuming that you had the qualifications to do that. You had to either win a Grand Slam title, a Davis Cup title, be ranked #1 in the world, and I think it had to be one of those 3. And of course, Rios was a former #1, so he was able to join the Champions Tour, and he dominated the first year that he was a part of that, winning 6 events, and he would continue to have success on the Champions Tour in later years, but he was still plagued a lot by injury problems. So unfortunately, I think with Rios, I look at his career as being something where maybe if he had been healthier, he could have won a couple of Grand Slam titles. I think the opportunities were there in the sense that he was really coming into his best years. There was a bit of an opening here for Rios, but unfortunately, because of those injuries, it just didn't quite work out for him. It really is a shame, because I do think he was a very talented player that just, unfortunately, his body just couldn't hold up, and he never really got that chance to show the world how good he was and to win a Grand Slam title. Let me know what you guys think of Marcelo Rios' career in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching this video, guys. I will see you at the next one. Hey everyone, this is Chris here, and today is Friday, May 12th, 2023. I've got a really interesting topic for you today. In this video, we're going to be discussing the career of Rod Laver, who was the only tennis player to have achieved the calendar year Grand Slam as a professional. In fact, Rod Laver was able to do this twice in the course of his career, once in 1962 as an amateur and the second time as a professional in 1969. Now, before we get into this topic, I would like to encourage you guys, if you're new to this channel, to please take a minute to hit the subscribe button down below. That'll keep you notified of any time we release additional content like this. And of course, if you enjoy videos like this, then please be sure to share this video with your friends. All right, guys, without further ado, let's get into it. So Rod Laver was born on August 9th of 1938, and an interesting side note is that this is a birth date that I believe is shared by a lot of tennis players. I think that Roger Federer was born on this day, or very close to it at least. I know that Pete Sampras was also born in early August. Felix Auger-Aliassime was born in early August. I guess early August is a good time to be born if you want to be a great tennis player, and of course Rod Laver would be no exception to this rule. So Rod Laver would start playing tennis at an early age, and in the late 1950s he would join up with the amateur circuit. Now, for those of you guys who might not be familiar with the way that the tour was constructed prior to the Open era, which started in 1968, the way that it worked was, going back to the 30s, they would start a professional circuit. Prior to that, everything was just amateur level. So you would have the Australian Open, the French Open. They weren't called Open at the time, they were called Championship. Wimbledon, and then the US Championship, basically. And so once the pro circuit started, you would have the US Pro, you'd have the French Pro, and you'd have Wembley. Like, those would be like the big Grand Slam events. Instead of having 4 of them, they had 3 of them. That would be the biggest difference. Now, another big difference between the amateur circuit and the pro circuit is that the amount of pros in the game back in the 1950s and the 60s were far, far less than today. So you'd have a lot of these guys, they would be playing smaller draws, essentially. And that's something that we'll get into in this video, is the smaller size of the draws that they would have at the pro events. So Rod Laver would turn amateur, basically, in the late 1950s, and he would win his first Grand Slam at the 1960 Australian Open, defeating Frazier in the finals in 5 sets. Then he would win his second Grand Slam title the following year at Wimbledon, when he defeated Chuck McKinley, I believe in straight sets at Wimbledon. Now, in 1962, Rod Laver would catch on fire, winning all 4 Grand Slam events: the Australian Open, the French Open, Wimbledon, and the US Open. And he was the first person to do this, I think, in 24 years, I want to say. Maybe a little bit longer than that. Don Budge, I believe, was the last person to do it before Rod Laver, but even back in this time, it was very rare for a player to win all 4 Grand Slam titles in the same year. So Rod Laver would turn pro in early 1963, and he would compete on the Pro Tour. It would take him a couple of years to really get going on the Pro Tour, and he would struggle a little bit with some of the other Australian players on the Pro Tour, like Ken Rosewall, who was one of his biggest rivals throughout his career, and also a slightly older Pancho Gonzalez, who of course is an amazing player who was still able to win a lot of important titles back in the 1960s. So Rod Laver would win, I want to say, 6 or 7 of the pro events. I know that he won a lot of the US Pro, and I think he won 1 of the French Pro and a couple of the Wembleys, but I'm not exactly sure which years he won them in. But I do know he won 3 in a row in 1967 as a pro. Now in 1968, oh, actually before we get into that, I want to go back to the Pro Tour for a minute. So we were talking a little bit about the difference of the draws. One thing that's very important to mention here is that the Austrian Open, because the event was held, so far away for most players, they didn't want to make that plane trip all the way down to Australia just to play in it. So for a lot of years, they would have a draw size of maybe 32 players, and most of them would be Australians. So this is one reason why I don't feel you can really equate the Australian Open as being a real Grand Slam, just because of the size of the draws prior to like the late 1980s or the early 1990s. The draws were really just too small, and it wasn't really attracting a lot of the best players in the world back then. So it would kind of depend year by year in terms of how strong the field actually was for that particular event. So when Rod Laver won the Australian Open in 1960 against Neil Fraser, there were only 32 players in that draw. So were those the best players on the amateur circuit? I'm not really sure about that, but I do know that when he defeated Chuck McKinley in 1961, there were 128 players in the draw, which is of course the same as today. So you do have to weigh that in a little bit. Now with the Pro Tour, the difference would be that they had smaller draws. So in a lot of cases, there would be a quarterfinal, a semifinal, and a final, and then there might be like a round of 16. But in many of these different pro events, the top seeded players would not play the round of 16. They would only play the last 3 rounds. So if you can imagine, it would be like winning a Grand Slam where you don't have to play the first 4 rounds of the event. And that does kind of affect things a little bit, I think, in terms of how important that title was to win it. Now, the caveat to this is that because things were done so differently back in the 1960s, they would have a lot of these best of matches. So, for instance, Rod Laver would play Ken Rosewall in like a best of series. So they might play each other 30 times or 40 times, and you would see who would win that series based on who won the most matches. Now, can you imagine Rafael Nadal playing Novak Djokovic 40 times in the course of a few months and just touring the world, just the two of them playing each other? I mean, that would be a pretty amazing thing to see. And of course, they don't have anything like that today. Nadal and Djokovic have played each other 60 times throughout the course of their entire career. So they would do that in the course of a couple of years back in the 1960s. These guys would play each other all the time. So that is kind of an interesting thing, but I just wanted to kind of explain that a little bit. And that's another reason why I really don't feel that you can compare eras, because the way that they structured things, especially back in the 1960s and before, was so different from the modern game. It's just impossible to do that. Anyway, now we're going to go ahead and jump into the Open era. So Rod Laver would win the first ever Wimbledon in 1968. And then in 1969, he would again catch fire, winning all 4 Grand Slam titles. The Austrian Open, of course, would be his first one, which he won very easily in straight sets. Then he would defeat Ken Rosewall in the finals of the French Open, again in straight sets, which is a very, very impressive win because Ken Rosewall was an amazing clay court player. Then he would go on to defeat John Newcombe in the final of Wimbledon in 1969. This would be 4 sets. And then he would complete the calendar year Grand Slam by defeating Tony Roche in the finals of the US Open. Once again, the match would be 4 sets. This is by far the most impressive accomplishment I think that any player has ever had, at least in the Open era. And it's one of the reasons why a lot of people do consider Rod Laver to be the greatest of all time, because he was actually able to do this, where so many players before him have failed to do this. Roger Federer, Novak Djokovic, Rafael Nadal even had a chance at it. Mats Wilander, Andre Agassi, the list goes, Pete Sampras, the list goes on. But Rod Laver was able to do it. So would I consider Rod Laver to be the greatest of all time because he was able to do this? Again, that's a very, very difficult question. An interesting thing actually on that is that a lot of the historians from his time, like Jack Kramer, did not consider Rod Laver to be one of the best ever, because they looked at how he performed against Pancho Gonzalez, who many people believe to be possibly the best of all time. They said, well, Pancho Gonzalez was actually competitive with Rod Laver in the 1960s, and Pancho at the time would have been into his 30s. So it does indicate that maybe if Pancho had been a bit younger, he would have been able to dominate Laver. We really will never know on that, but I personally don't believe that. But I would say that Rod Laver is certainly among the best players to have ever played the game, without any question. I don't think you can make any type of direct comparison between him and Federer or something, and it would be kind of ridiculous to think of how he would perform against Federer, because if you kept the equipment as being the same, obviously Rod Laver is going to lose the match. And if they both play with wood rackets, then it doesn't really make any sense. So I think that you have to look at it, who's the best of their era. And I would absolutely say 100% Rod Laver was the best player to come out of the 1960s. He would also have a pretty good time in the early 70s, winning some important events. And he would eventually retire from tennis in 1978, I believe it was. But without question, he was an inspirational player who would really, he was like that guy that a lot of the kids looked up to. You know, he was known as the Rocket because of how powerful his shots were. He was a left-handed player. I know that John McEnroe really looked up to him and based a lot of his game off of the way that Rod Laver would construct points. And he was just a very humble man, a very good representative of the game of tennis. And I think that he's someone that's really given a lot to the sport, even though people don't really talk a lot about him today because he played so long ago. I did want to do a video just to talk about some of the great benefits that he's had and all the people that he's inspired and just the wonderful legacy that he's left in the game. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think of Rod Laver's career in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I will see you at the next one. Hey everyone, this is Chris here, and welcome to the Wimbledon Wars. This is the video we're going to be discussing the 3 classic matches between Boris Becker and Stefan Edberg that occurred at Wimbledon from 1988 through 1990. Now before we get into this topic, I'd like to encourage you guys, if you're new to this channel, to please take a minute to hit the subscribe button down below. That'll keep you notified of any time we release additional content like this, and of course, if you enjoy videos like this, then please be sure to share this video with your friends. Alright guys, without further ado, let's get into it. Boris Becker and Stefan Edberg. If you hear those two names, you can't help but think about grass court tennis. Indeed, these guys were 2 of the very best grass court players of their generation. Boris Becker was able to win Wimbledon 3 times in the course of his career. He was in a number of other finals in the 90s. And Stefan Edberg was also able to have a very good career at Wimbledon, winning it twice and losing, I think, 1 final to Becker in 1989, which we'll be getting into in this video. So Boris Becker, between the 2 of these players, he was the one that really got going first. He would have his first big breakthrough on the tour in 1985 when he was able to win Wimbledon at the age of 17, defeating Kevin Curran in the finals. And Becker would very impressively manage to follow this up by retaining his title the following year in 1986, defeating Ivan Lendl in straight sets. Now in 1987, he would suffer a major defeat at the hands of Peter Duelhan. He wound up beating Boris Becker in the second or third round at Wimbledon in 4 sets. And then in 1988, Becker was able to get his momentum back, his mojo back. He was able to make the finals of Wimbledon, but he was facing another really tough grass court player in the form of Stefan Edberg. Now, Edberg had already won 2 Australian Opens, and back in this time period, the Australian Open was contested on grass. So it was already well established that Stefan Edberg was a great grass court player, and he had a game that was naturally suited to it, being a serve and volleyer. Edberg hadn't really made a name for himself on the tour, and he was still looking for that big first win to really kind of show the world that he had arrived and he was going to be one of these next big important players in the coming few years. And Edberg would get off to kind of a shaky start, if you will, against Becker in this first meeting between them. He would lose the first set, but he would stay tough, and in the second set, the set would go to a tiebreaker, which Edberg was able to win, so we got the match back on level terms. He's facing definitely one of the best grass court players of this time period, but he's able to win the third set, and Becker just kind of goes off the rails a little bit, and then Edberg just starts playing brilliantly. He's hitting these running forehand winners against Becker. He's just diving for balls. He's getting net cord winners. He's playing just incredibly well, and he winds up winning the fourth set. He wins the match. He defeats Boris Becker, the best grass court player in the world at that time, and he wins his very first Wimbledon championship. Now, the pair would meet again the following year, but before we get into that, I'm going to actually mention their Roland Garros meeting in 1989, and that match went to 5 sets. It was a very, very close match, but Edberg was just barely able to squeak past Becker, and of course he would lose to Chang in the final in 5 sets. Now, when he had to face off against Boris Becker in this final, Becker wasn't playing around. He got straight down to business and had a tremendous start against Edberg. He wins the first set 6-love. And then Edberg finds his way into the second set. They're both on serve and they're both fighting, trying to get ahead. Edberg manages to do that. He serves for the second set at 6-5. He has a set point to win the second set, but Becker is just determined. He's not going to lose this final to Edberg. He's not going to let him beat him twice. So he winds up breaking in this game. He easily wins the tiebreaker. He wins the next set. He wins the match. Just an incredible level quality-wise for Boris Becker. It's probably one of the best tennis matches from a quality standpoint from one player that I've ever seen. I would put it right up there with Pete Sampras's 1999 Wimbledon final. It was amazing to watch this. Now, in 1990, a lot of things had changed by this point. Becker, who had had a great year in 1989, was kind of slumped at that point. He had had a breakup with his girlfriend, which was really affecting him a lot on an emotional level. And Stefan Edberg was playing pretty well at the time, but of course Becker's still playing well enough to make the finals of Wimbledon. So Becker had taken some sleeping pills on the night before the final, but when he wakes up to play the match, his body's just not into it, and he winds up losing the first 2 sets. And then in the third set, suddenly he comes back to life. He wakes up, he's able to win the third set, he wins the fourth set. Now he's leveled the match, we're into a 5th set, and Becker is able to get a break against Edberg. And at this point, he feels like he's got it. He's got it in the bag. He's going to win Wimbledon. He's going to avenge his 1988 loss again to Edberg. But Edberg's not having any of that. He's mad now. He wants to win Wimbledon, and he gets fired up, and he winds up breaking back, and he wins the match, and he wins his series against Boris Becker. So it's a very interesting state of affairs, and it really just goes to show you that even though one player might win the majority of the matches, it really just comes down to how they're playing on that particular day, and Edberg was playing a lot better on that day, and it made all the difference, and he was able to win that match against Becker. So if you guys have any memories of watching these matches, then please leave me a comment in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching today's video, and I will see you at the next one. Hey everyone, this is Chris here, and today is July 17th, 2023. In this video, we're going to be discussing the Wimbledon results between Carlos Alcaraz and Novak Djokovic, and I'm going to be giving you my thoughts on who I think is going to be the player to watch for in the next few years. Now, before we get into this topic, I'd like to encourage you guys, if you're new to this channel, to please take a minute to hit the subscribe button down below. That'll keep you notified of any time we release additional content like this. And of course, if you enjoy videos like this, then please be sure to share this video with your friends. All right, guys, without further ado, let's get into it. Now I'm going to go ahead and give you guys my thoughts on what's going on in the game right now. And we're at a very interesting transitional time, I would say, in tennis. And it kind of reminds me a lot of the way tennis was maybe 20 years ago or a little bit before that, where Federer was starting to break through on the scene, but yet you still have Agassi, you still have Sampras, you still have some of those older guys from Agassi's generation that were periodically able to break through and win Grand Slam titles. Now, the biggest difference from back then to today is the fact that the big three and the old guard, if you will, are winning everything pretty much. And with the sole exception of Carlos Alcaraz, the young guys aren't able to do anything against the old guard. And that's a serious problem in tennis. I think that some people have tried to sweep that under the rug by just assuming that the next gen guys are eventually going to make that breakthrough and we're finally going to see them start to win Grand Slam titles, and they've, kind of anointed them as the next gen. They've given them all these accolades, and they've been given kind of the same spotlight, if you will, as the big three, yet they don't have the results. That is a huge problem because they are showing right now that they are not up to the task of doing what they need to do, and that is beating the big three and forcing them out of the game and stepping in and winning these Grand Slam titles. The only person who has done this is Carlos Alcaraz. Daniil Medvedev was able to win one Grand Slam title, but I think we all know that Djokovic was clearly exhausted at the US Open in 2021. And again, it's only happened that one time. The only player that I'm seeing from this next gen group that looks to have really any quality behind them at the moment is Alcaraz. And again, I think that's a bad sign for the future of the game. Now, I did want to talk a little bit about the Wimbledon final itself. I actually thought it was phenomenal. I wasn't expecting much based on how one-sided Djokovic's semifinal was against Jannik Sinner, who just completely collapsed. And that was extremely disappointing because Sinner had at least taken Djokovic to 5 sets last year, so I was hoping maybe it would be competitive again, and it was just a blowout. And again, it goes back to, I hate to harp on this, but it goes back to how bad these next gen guys are. But the nice thing was Carlos Alcaraz really impressed, and he made up for a lot of bad performances from the next gen group at Wimbledon. So the first set, Carlos lost it quite convincingly. He dropped it 6-1, but he fought through really well in the second set. He stayed tough. He was able to rip the tiebreaker away from Djokovic. Again, mostly because Djokovic made some errors at critical points, but he was able to still get the job done. Carlos surprisingly reversed things on Djokovic in the third set, where he was able to win that 6-1. And then Djokovic would come back to take the fourth set. I believe it was 6-3 or 6-4. And then I was really surprised by the outcome. I wasn't expecting Alcaraz to win. I really thought that Djokovic was going to be able to pull that off, but surprisingly, Alcaraz got the break early on in the fifth set, and he was able to win his second Grand Slam title at Wimbledon, or second Grand Slam title overall. against Djokovic, 6-4 in the 5th set. So it was a good result for Carlos. Some people have asked me, is this the passing of the torch moment? I don't think so. I don't see any indication that Djokovic is going away anytime soon. In fact, I still pick him to win a bare minimum of 25 Grand Slam titles, and I actually think he's going to maybe reach 30 Grand Slam titles before his career is over. I know some people think that I'm a little crazy on that, but I think he's going to do it. But it was still, looking beyond that, it was a great achievement for Carlos regardless. I think that Carlos needs a lot more of these matches going forward because he has very weak competition, and we kind of know that now. We kind of know that Jannik Sinner is not up to the task of being an all-time great, or even really maybe like a Roddick level, and or maybe like a Stan level. I'll be a little bit more fair about it. And I don't know about Holger Rune. You know, he's young, but really we don't know at this point. And then if you go back to the older guys, Medvedev, Rublev, Shapovalov, Kyrgios, if you want to throw them in there, Aliassime, those players, I would say no, none of those guys are up to the task whatsoever of winning a Grand Slam title because, except for Medvedev, who's already done it, but they're not up to it because they don't have the weaponry, they don't have the abilities, they don't have the desire, maybe, I don't know, but they don't have it. And that's just, it's as simple as that. And we're going to have to wait, I think, a few more years to see someone who's younger, who can step up to challenge Alcaraz. And probably that's when the game is going to be more fun to watch for people who are tired of seeing the big three dominate all the time. It's going to take up to that point to really see something that's competitive again. Personally, I've enjoyed it. I really enjoyed watching the big three. I grew up with those players, so I'm not in any hurry to see them retire from tennis. But I'm just saying, for those of you guys who are sick of it, you're probably still going to have to sit through a couple more years of Djokovic winning Grand Slam titles, and things might be kind of boring, to be honest, for the next few years, because I think Alcaraz is going to pretty much mow through the competition until somebody decent comes along who can challenge him. But anyway, guys, those are my thoughts on the Wimbledon final. Let me know what you thought of it in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching today's video, and I will see you at the next one. Hey everyone, this is Chris here, and welcome to another exciting episode of Chill Tennis Entertainment. In today's video, we're going to be discussing Novak Djokovic's recent record-breaking accomplishment of winning his 24th Grand Slam title by defeating Daniil Medvedev in the finals of the US Open in straight sets. Now, before we get into this topic, I'd like to encourage you guys, if you're new to this channel, to please take a minute to hit the subscribe button down below. That'll keep you notified of any time we release additional content like this. And of course, if you enjoy videos like this, then please be sure to share this video with your friends. Alright guys, without further ado, let's get into it. So a couple months ago, we had a conversation about the future of men's tennis, the future of the pro game, and I was very pointed in my feelings on Carlos Alcaraz and how I personally don't think he's going to be a future all-time great player. Carlos Alcaraz, of course, had just won Wimbledon at the time. He defeated Djokovic in what many people consider to be the best match of the year, stunning Djokovic in 5 sets at Wimbledon. And in the time since, these players would meet again in Cincinnati, with Djokovic narrowly edging Carlos in that match in the finals. And then heading into the US Open, we had a very interesting potential of Djokovic meeting Alcaraz in the final and having a potential blockbuster of a showdown, if you will, because let's face it, there really isn't any other exciting match in the pro game today other than Djokovic versus Alcaraz. Now, surprisingly, that's not what we got. We wound up getting Djokovic versus Medvedev, a repeat of the 2021 US Open final. And before we get into the final, I wanted to talk about a young player who I'm sure you guys are well aware of now, named Ben Shelton. Now, Ben Shelton has had a very interesting season. He started off by reaching the quarterfinals of the Australian Open, and he didn't really win very many matches in between that and his run at the US Open, but he had a pretty incredible run. He was able to make the semifinals of the US Open, and he looked very, very good in his matches leading up to the semis of the US Open. So I wanted to talk about Shelton a little bit and kind of give you my thoughts on that, because we really haven't covered him at all on this channel up to this point. First of all, first thing I want to say about it is that Shelton is a college player, so of course in today's game, usually college players don't win Grand Slam titles, but I'll admit he's a pretty exceptional tennis player. I would not be surprised if we see more good things from him in the years to come, especially given his age. He's only just turned 21 years old. And I actually think that he's going to be a very interesting player to watch, because he has a big game. He hits with a lot of power. Both of his parents were former Division I tennis players. And of course, we have to talk about his celebration, his hang up the phone celebration, which Novak Djokovic implemented so perfectly when he defeated him in their semifinal match. Some people have talked about Shelton and whether or not he has a bad attitude, and have even compared him a little bit to Nick Kyrgios. And in my opinion, I think it's a very bad comparison, because Nick Kyrgios really is a player who had a lot of potential, who I've talked about several times on this channel, who had a bad attitude, who never really applied himself to the game, who, again, made one Grand Slam final, made a couple of quarterfinals early in his career, had a few wins against Nadal and a couple against Djokovic, and really never did anything. I think he's a guy who was terrible for the game. I never thought he was a blockbuster guy or a box office attraction or any of that other nonsense that people want to talk about. Ben Shelton, I think, is a lot different from that. I'm actually kind of excited about Shelton and his prospects a little bit, because he is out of the box and a little bit too explosive at this point. However, he is young, and I really appreciate his enthusiasm for wanting to get better and push himself. And that's something that Nick Kyrgios never had. He never talked about wanting to keep getting better and pushing himself, and clearly Shelton is cut from a much different cloth. Plus the fact that his parents were former tennis professionals, at least his dad was, I think will be good for him in the long run. I would not be surprised if he has issues similar to Stefanos Tsitsipas, where he needs to really find a coach that can take him to that next level, and the parents just aren't capable of doing that. That's normally the case unless your uncle happens to be Tony Nadal. But as a rule, I think Shelton is going to be good for the game, and I'm actually kind of excited to see what he does. Moving along into the other semifinal, I was surprised to see Alcaraz lose to Medvedev. I thought Medvedev probably was not going to be up to the task, since he certainly wasn't at Wimbledon. But Medvedev played a phenomenal match. He wound up winning in 4 sets. and it was a huge win for Daniil Medvedev. So going into the final, I thought it would be a pretty interesting showdown. Normally I wouldn't really, because Medvedev versus Djokovic is kind of a matchup where you're normally just going to favor Djokovic to win, but Daniil did have that win against Djokovic 2 years ago, so I thought that this would be kind of an interesting grudge match, if you will. And not surprisingly, Djokovic was able to avenge his loss to Medvedev in the finals, and he beat him in straight sets. So looking ahead now, how do I see things breaking down into next year? Do I see anything different from a couple of months ago? Well, in my opinion, not really, because Alcaraz, again, in my opinion, is still going to be the favorite to win a lot of these Grand Slam titles, because there's really no one else other than Djokovic who can beat him on a consistent basis. Medvedev just did it, but I don't know. I mean, I still kind of favor Alcaraz to win a lot of these Grand Slam titles. I think Djokovic is also going to win a lot of them as well. I wouldn't be surprised if Djokovic winds up winning 3 or 4 of them next year. I could also see him splitting them with Alcaraz, or maybe splitting them with Alcaraz and a different player. But I think that Djokovic is going to win at least a couple of Grand Slam titles for the next few years. And I really do think he's going to wind up winning 30 Grand Slam titles before he retires. So those are my thoughts. Let me know what you guys thought in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching today's video, and I will see you at the next one.